Good evening. This is the Community Preservation Committee, Monday, February 6, 2023, 7 p.m. As you can see, the meeting is starting late. We actually had some technical difficulties, so we apologize for that. We will take a roll call to see members in audience. Rajesh?
Aye.
Deborah?
Here.
Melanie?
Here.
Martha?
Here.
Gail?
Here.
Perna?
Yeah.
Jim?
Here.
Kathy?
Here.
And myself, Jason Molina, chairperson. Aye. Here I am. Okay. With that, we'll get into the first order of business, which is review and approve minutes from the January 9th, 2023 meeting. Are there any questions or comments relative to the minutes? Okay, not hearing any. All those in favor, sorry, because we have some people on the online. We'll do a roll call on that one as well. Not hearing any comments on that. We'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Moved. Motion moved.
Second.
Okay. And I'll do a roll call to see if you approve the minutes. So Rajesh,
Aye.
you're approving. Deborah,
Aye.
Melanie,
Aye.
Martha,
Aye.
Gail,
Aye.
Verna,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Minutes are approved. Okay, next order of business is the budget review. And for that, I'll turn over to Rowan McAllister for that.
Thank you. I apologize. Give me one moment as I pull it up. All right, so, all right, can the committee see that well enough? Can take it line by line. So just to go over the funds that we have to consider distributing tonight. You can see in the FY23 column that will be our most up-to-date kind of budgetary items. So we've got our total annual revenue, surcharge, and the state match, and then the rollover from the previous year that we collected but obviously did not distribute. So our total funding tonight that is available is about 1.8 million, okay? And then further down, we can, all right, see here, mapping out our total appropriation at this time. We have our administrative expenses at 5% of our annual revenue, and then we have our 3 buckets of reserve funds, essentially. So tonight, as we consider the projects in front of you, please keep in mind that we'll have to allocate or reserve the admin funds as well as the community housing reserve because we don't have any of those projects. However, the total open space and total historic preservation reserve funds could be completely used tonight if you chose. So further, these are our requested projects amounts tonight. So we have open space projects seen here, right? With a total of around 600,000, with our historic preservation projects totaling about 150,000. So you can see here, I've broken them down for each funding request. So in all, if we combine our total project requests of about 700,000, a little under 800,000, and add it to our community housing community housing reserve, and then our admin expenses, our total is just over about $1 million in funds, if you follow, right, funds that either have to be reserved or could be expended tonight. So are there any questions, any other details that you'd like me to go over?
Rowan, it's Jim LeMay. I don't see it. I don't see the number that you're mentioning as far as the total being $1 million or close to $1 million. Where is that line? Am I missing it?
No, Jim, you're not missing it, and I apologize. I can even do the math for you real quick right now. I can,
Is it just the 784 plus the 182 plus the 52?
correct.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Yep.
I can do that math too, thanks.
A quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
So does the all requested funding is for fiscal year 23, or is the long-term, like 2-year projects in there? I thought that some of them go beyond one fiscal year, right?
No, I mean,
We're approving we're approving the allocation for FY '24,
Mhm.
right, and only for FY '24. We cannot approve for future years.
Right.
The projects that are before us have already been broken down to phases, so
Okay.
the applicants understand that they're being funded for the phase in which we're discussing here, and they'll come back to the well if it, if
Okay.
as necessary.
Wonderful.
Rowan, I think just want to clarify, you mentioned $1 million of, to be reserved, or expended. But it's really the 10%, each of the categories to be, to minimally reserved, in which that's why you will be covering the community housing piece at 10%, whereas the other buckets, through these projects, we're going to be pretty much covering the expected 10% minimum, per fiscal year.
I believe, yeah, that is correct. I mean, if you go, you can see the total historic preservation projects don't exceed the 10% reserve. So in kind of best practices from the committee, we could be encouraged to just spend that straight from our reserve and not dip into our unbudgeted funds.
Okay. And it's my understanding that we're going to be revisiting the full warrant article in next meeting.
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you. So just sort of as a background, or maybe even looking ahead, the projects that you decide to fund tonight will go on to our budget, our budget article, and between this meeting and our next, once we set it, at least, I will be drafting that along with sort of the required pieces of each project that will need to be called out in that budget article. You'll have a chance to review it, provide your feedback, and then vote on it again at the next meeting.
Okay, great. Any other questions about?
A quick question.
Verna?
So since we don't have any community housing projects, can the open space, can we use the community housing reserves and other reserves towards the open space projects?
No.
No.
No?
But you do have, right, the difference between this about 600,000 number and the 1.8 is your unreserved fund, or unbudgeted, I believe, fund. So it's not it's not just that 600,000 that you see there. You have about
Right,
you
so,
have additional funds. Is that clear? Would you like to go over that?
Yeah.
Because if you remember, right, there's that pie, that the 65% is on the unbudgeted
Yeah.
be
money.
used for any of the CPA eligible categories. Admin expenses are capped at up to 5%.
Yeah.
And each of the other categories, open space and recreation, being combined together into one budget. So community housing, open space and recreation to combine, historic preservation, each have to have a minimum of 10%
Yeah.
allocated to them. And that's why it was purposely written that way in the Mass General Law 44B to say each of these areas have to have spending in that allocation in that area to ensure that they're getting traction in this space. So
Yeah.
that was the compromise, to make sure that each of those participants had that funding for them, right? So in this year, we don't have any projects that were raised through this point for community housing, so we will just recommend allocating that's the minimum 10% into that reserve. Any other questions about the budget as it is right now, in this work in progress as we get through the projects? Okay. Yes.
So this includes that 60,000 surplus money that was left, or it's not?
So this does not. And I spoke to the coalition today about that. And that is because our FY23 budget did not include those extra matching funds, right? So this number here, the state match, is our estimate from our budget article. And so that's the number we have to use tonight. We all understand that there are additional funds in our account, but because we've only budgeted for this, that's the amount that we can basically distribute for this fiscal year.
All right, sounds good. Any other questions?
Oops, sorry, Jason, I
Yes.
missed that, Rowan. So FY 2022, sorry, FY 22, surcharge revenue of 700, there is no state match from 2022?
No, because state matches always match the previous year. So 22 was
Got
our
it.
first
First.
year,
Thank you.
didn't have any
Thank
matching
you.
funds from the
Yep,
previous.
okay, you did, yep, got it, okay, thank you.
Say it again? I'm not sure.
I think it was good. I think it was
Okay.
good.
Great.
Yeah, I was just saying thank you for the explanation.
All right. Last call. Any more questions? I'm sure people watching want to hear the next item. Okay, great. All right, move on to the next agenda item, which is deliberation and voting on each of the project funding applications. Okay. All right, so before we get into that, I do want to just make, I just want to make a point. So the role of the Community Preservation Committee is to review each of these applications. We've done that through an eligibility check early on in the year, and then we've done that through the formal application and seeing, interpreting what the applicants have brought in. We've heard directly from the applicants. We've done our due diligence as best as we can. We've reached out to the coalition relative to very nuanced questions that we received. From the start, we started out with 13 project requests, and here we are tonight remaining with 8. These 8 projects are up for discussion to understand whether they should be recommended or not recommended or altered in a funding downward position, but recommending it forward to town meeting. Town meeting ultimately has the say on whether these projects are funded. Our role, again, is to recommend or not recommend, and also with that recommendation is to reduce if so needed. As a 9-member committee, we should expect that we're going to be hearing a lot of questions and perhaps disagreement about whether a project should be recommended or not. And that's a good thing. That's a sign of a healthy committee to have different voices and opinions about projects. What I would say to the applicants in hearing the deliberations is it's not a reflection of their effort in submitting this project. It's not a reflection of their drive to have this project sought forth. It's really just you have 9 members who represent different aspects of this community. 5 of them are statutorily appointed to this committee. 4 of them are appointed by the select board. And each has a perspective that they're coming to the table with. We're also looking at this from a prioritization perspective. So projects could be coming in as it's a great thing to do for Shrewsbury, for increasing our quality of life here. However, it may not be in the right prioritization from our perspectives as we did talk about that. So just wanted to put that out there because certainly, I think, someone sitting at home watching the video and saying, I can't believe they're saying that about my project. It's going to be expected, and that's a good thing to have because from this 9-member committee, we're going to be going to an audience of 240 town meeting members who are going to be voicing their opinions, and they're going to vary even more widely than we are tonight. Our committee is going to be the most informed about these projects. Our committee is going to be looked upon as having done the best due diligence possible so that when we go to the next step, which is to the finance committee, to the select board, and ultimately the town meeting, that they're reliant on us that we've done our part, and we can speak to those bodies about these projects that are being recommended moving forward. So with that, are there any questions about deliberation and how we're going to proceed?
I have a question. We are not limited as to how many of those 8 we could suggest to go forward, correct? I mean, if we chose to send all 8 projects to the finance and to town meeting, we can do that. We're not limited as to the number of projects we recommend.
We're not
Correct?
limited by quantity, but we're limited by budget.
Correct,
And
okay.
thankfully,
Oh.
all these projects are within
Great.
our available funds. Yes. The
That
ones
makes
that have
it a
been
little
submitted,
easier.
the ones that have been submitted through to date. Of course, as we know, as we created the community preservation plan, that there is always an opportunity for an off-cycle request.
Yep.
So to date, we have not received any of those, so this is where we are now.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, all right, so I'd like to start off with the townwide playground assessment. And that's from Parks and Recreation budget. And with that, I'd like to actually see if Jim, if you wouldn't mind, if you have any, I'll give you the floor first to see if you have any comments or questions about that project, as it's part of your,
Yeah,
yep.
sure. I mean, so as far as just commentary about the overall project, it's something that we in the Parks and Cemetery Commission have discussed for a number of years to try and do something very similar to this. We've had, this kind of on our agenda without any funds available to do something very similar to this, which is to assess the needs of the community, assess the current state of the playgrounds in the community, and then to, somehow make a plan to come up with, to address some of the deficiencies that we may have within some of the playgrounds or improvements that we can make within some of the playgrounds. So this would be the first step in a multi-phase process to address those needs of the playgrounds in the town.
Great. Anybody else? Especially if, most members were here in the January meeting where we had a lengthy, healthy discussion about these projects. Some of us were not able to attend that meeting, so if you have any other insight, as you weren't there, and Kathy, you were there as well, so give you an opportunity to comment.
No, I think comprehensive review is timely and a good investment of CPA funds. So, and this also does include going a little bit further with the Edgemere playground as well, so that project would commence as well. I'm in favor of this.
Kathy?
One thing I've been struggling with a little bit is how does this playground assessment tie in with 2 of our other projects, which are playgrounds? So Dean Park is not part of it, but I know the Arrowwood would be. So is it a chicken and the egg thing? Like if we approve that, does that put Arrowwood on delay? Because we have to do an assessment before we do any playground. So that's just I don't know
So
if anyone can
no,
answer
that's-
that.
Right, no, that's a fair question, because that came up in our last, in our
Okay,
January
I
meeting.
apologize.
No, that's okay, no, totally fine. Like I said,
Extenuating circumstances.
of course. A lot of, what a crazy January, for sure, a lot of members. Jim, would you like to summarize that, if you may?
Sure. So, as Jason mentioned, this did come up in our last discussion, and it was actually a question that we asked of Keith Baldier to basically address, right? So the exact question is how I worded it was, how do the parks projects that are currently under discussion at CPA and ARPA, Edgemere, Townfield Assessments, Arrowwood, intersect with each other? So basically, Kathy, just kind of asking the same question that you asked is, how do we tie them all in, or are they going to be tied all in, or does one affect the other, right? So what Keith basically said was that they're all part of an overall strategy. They are all things that need to be addressed. There's not a chicken and egg, as you accurately described the thoughts, which is the exact same thoughts that I had, was does one affect the other? Does one have to happen before the other? I believe, and summarizing what Keith said here, is that we're gonna do our best to leverage every single opportunity that we have to improve our parks so that one isn't, isn't codependent upon the other. So if they both get approved and if they both get sent to town meeting and if town meeting allocates the funds, great. If they both don't get it, that's okay too. You can still plow forward with one or whatever does get approved. So it's not like they have to have everything all lumped into the same basket.
Thank
I
you.
hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Yep.
I think the other point to bring up on that one was it was important to maintain that we had two different applicant submissions, right? One is enthusiastically community-driven, resident-driven. We wanted to make sure that that was still going to remain on its own merit, and shine that way as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think it was a good question, and we had a lot of conversation about that. So that was good. Any other questions, thoughts about this project?
No.
Great. Well, I'll say as well, I think, this is I think a great project to move forward on. I think it's overall short money to look at across all the playgrounds and make that assessment and really get an inventory about the work that needs to get done, so that it creates an opportunity for additional projects to come to CPC as necessary to address the deficiencies across these playgrounds. And that it actually does also move forward on specifically Edgemere. So it's definitely a already known playground that needs rehabbing. Okay, well, not hearing any other questions. Jim, would you like to make the motion as Parks Commissioner?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to move forward with the approval from CPC to push this project forward to town meeting.
Actually, Jim, could you rephrase that in the frame of recommending, saying that,
Okay.
recommending that the CPC recommends this project to be move forward and allocate $70,000?
Okay, so I would like to recommend that, I'd like to make a motion that CPC recommend to have the playground assessment with a budget of $70,000 moved forward for a committee vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. With that, I'll do a roll call on the motion. All right. This is the aye vote, okay? If you have an alternative, then please tell me, okay? Rajesh? Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Gail?
Aye.
Verna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Project is recommended. Okay, next project is the Arrowwood Playground, submitted by Jenna McCann. Jim, can you start us off as well?
Yeah, I'm just struggling with my mute button, sorry about that. So the Arrowwood project. So at one of our initial CPC meetings, Jenna, who pushed this one forward, reached out to the committee and talked a lot about the needs of the Arrowwood project that she submitted, the application that she submitted. She talked about the needs of the children. She did a really nice job presenting at a formal CPC meeting about her project and what would be entailed with her project. She actually went out on her own and got some designs made up by someone that she either knew or was pointed to. So they actually gave us some preliminary designs that were part of the application work that Jenna put forward. So this would basically be a building of a new park. There is an existing park at Arrowwood. It comes as a swing set and some other equipment, but it is really in need of, I would say, a redo, if you will. So what is put forward in front of us is a redo of that playground in addition to utilizing some other existing space that's not currently being used.
Thank you.
The target age group is under 12 for this playground.
May I jump in?
Please.
Just to expand upon Jim's point, just to call to the attention of the committee that the ultimate goal is to replace or enhance the playground, but at this point, the phase that's being requested is a design phase.
Right, sorry, thank you.
And no, that's fine, I think, just to make that clear. Phase two would be the implementation of that if they were awarded the design funds, but with back and forth between the co-sponsor, the Department of Public Works, as well as Jenna, they agreed that the design phase would come first, and that's what's in front of you for the request tonight.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Okay, anybody else?
Do we know if by community, the original application was a little bit broader, if it's just the design, do they need the whole $40,000, or will $40,000 complete the design phase for them?
That is my understanding.
Okay.
And they'll also be taking advantage of the assessment as well, right, as we just approved that.
Right.
So that's,
That was the original question that I had previously, was just that it wouldn't be redundant. I didn't want to pay for two assessments when one would do the job.
right. And I think, there's, these are allocations. If it's not spent, it certainly, goes back to
It'll
the
be
bucket.
returned.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, this application absolutely wins for the enthusiasm and the spirit of it, exactly what we want CPC to be.
Right, exactly. Anybody else?
I agree. I think this is exactly what CPC is designed for. And I just did all my math here, and this was scored the highest for me. So just as a FYI.
All right.
No, I stick to my last meeting's comments. So it's definitely a go from my side.
Okay, great. This is another exciting project. Looking forward to seeing that part of town take pride in their local playground, and this is the first step in that process. So, great move. Okay, so with that, Jim, could you also lead us in that recommendation? Sorry, in that motion as well, and that is going to be for $40,000. Jim, you might be on mute.
Thank you, Jason. I was on mute. Thank you very much. So I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the Arrowwood Drive Playground Project. The request is for $40,000 for the design. So I would like to make a motion to push that to the committee for their approval to bring to town meeting.
Second.
I couldn't hear. Did you say recommend in there?
I did say recommend.
Recommend.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And it's been seconded?
Second.
Thank you. All right. So with that, all those in favor, I'm going to say aye, so I will go down the roll call. Rajesh?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Yes, aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Gail?
Aye.
Perna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Arrowwood is approved to recommend. Okay. All right, next is Dean Park basketball courts.
May I just jump in with a reminder to the committee that your voting threshold is 5 members for a vote of recommendation. Maybe we should have covered that earlier, but your simple quorum, simple majority
Thank you.
would grant the recommendation.
All right. Jim, can you lead us off with Dean Park, please? Basketball courts.
Yep. I'm just making sure I'm off mute. Am I off mute?
You are.
Yes, I'm off mute. Okay, good. All right, so Dean Park basketball courts. This actually was part of a a effort that was done a few years back with a consulting organization. They came in and did an assessment of multiple parks within the town. They did Dean Park, Maple Ave, and Lake Ave as part of the assessment. This was a recommendation that was done by that consulting committee to improve on the existing basketball courts that are at Dean Park. The request for funds for this project is what was recommended as part of that assessment. So the funds and the budgeting for that comes from that assessment, which is, I believe, 375. Is that the number? I think I'm right on that one.
Yes, 375.
Yep, thank you. So this is really something that was put in place a number of years ago, like I said, as part of an overall assessment of the parks in the town of Shrewsbury by that consulting organization.
Okay. In the committee comments, questions?
I just have one comment. I think although this is a large ticket item, I think it is a project that affects a lot of the whole community. Everyone can use it, so it's in proportion to maybe other projects, it's money well spent and to improve our recreation. Kids and adults as well need places to go to recreate, so I'm in favor of this project.
Thank you. And Gail, you brought up a question last meeting about seeing an itemized detail about breakdown of that 375, and that was provided.
Mm-hmm.
If it's in the drive.
Yeah.
I'm all set, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just a
Yeah, Vernon.
quick comment. I agree with the comment made. It's a very good project that can be useful for everybody in the town, and it is expensive item, but I think it's worth it. And once they provided that additional information, I am very much in favor. This scored the highest on my list, but it's a good project. We should support it.
You have a question?
I don't think I've ever been through the park where the basketball courts aren't being used. So,
Even in January.
yeah, in the middle of the day, there's always someone playing ball there.
All right, all right. You good?
I agree with all that's said. This also is, exactly the sort of project that we were looking for, that CPC is about. And it's accessible to everyone. Whether you play basketball or little kids run around on it. If we have great courts, Parks and Rec could even have a tournament or something that we currently don't have resources for. So it's a big ticket, but it fits.
Fits. Yeah, definitely. This is another project that fits right in there with the community needs, right? It definitely aligns, just like the last two projects, lining up with the needs of our community. So I'm definitely in favor of this project as well.
Yep. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just one additional comment on that. While it is a big ticket item, the project is complete construction. Unlike some of these other projects where it's just the assessment phase,
Right.
and then comes the construction. So
Right.
this is like everything, including, and we see the whole project done. So in that respect, I think we have to look at it slightly differently. That it is big ticket item, but it's not big ticket item in a big picture sense,
Right.
because it included all the things and it's done versus just assessing design and then construction.
Right. It's
It's timely
good
as
point.
well, because they're currently revamping the playground in Dean Park. So it makes a lot of sense to have this project's completed simultaneously. We'll have a park we could be proud of.
awesome. Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right. So with that, Jim, can you please make a motion on this project? This is, again, $375,000 is the requested item, a budget.
Yep. I'd like to make a motion that that the CPC recommend to town meeting to fund $375,000 for the refurbishment of the Dean Park basketball courts.
Okay.
Second?
Thank you. All right, roll call. Rajesh?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Gail?
Aye.
Perna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Project is moving forward for recommendation. Okay, next is parking area for Camp Wanigan, Trails Committee. And Jim, would you be able to speak to that one?
Sure.
Please, thank
let's
you.
see, so which one, this is the, sorry, this was the Camp Wanigan one?
Camp Wanigan, parking lot to increase accessibility, access to the trails there.
Yep. So, sorry, is somebody else something to say?
Say again?
Okay. I wasn't sure if somebody else was trying to talk. I was hearing some feedback, so I wasn't sure if somebody else was trying to talk.
Oh, sorry.
That's all good. So this application was put forward to have it, to do some construction of a parking area, 645 Grafton Street, which is basically providing access to Camp Wanigan. Currently, there is no parking that's available that I'm aware of at this location to the camp. So what basically we're doing here is we're going to be building a parking area so that folks can park their cars and take advantage of the Camp Wanigan area as opposed to trying to park their car somewhere else and then having to walk down Grafton Street to get to the area. So this really just provides a safe and accessible parking area for access to the camp. The dollar amount, I forget what the dollar amount was, Jason, on this one?
Yes, I'll read it out because it's to the penny. $141,000, $141,822.81. Just to be specific.
This way, okay, good.
Excuse me. Any committee questions, thoughts?
So I think this is one other good example of CPC funding going to very neglected or not very well managed or maintained trail, which is very helpful for a lot of community members, not just surrounding the trail but beyond that. So this is, as I said, money worth spent. Definitely recommend that.
Can I just add one comment here?
Sure, please do.
Having the parking area allows the Trails Committee to fulfill a long-standing wish to be able to have group walks and to invite people to park in a lot that was, convenient meeting place, and then have a guided walk through the park. We plan, in my role as a member of the Trails Committee, I plan on leading plenty of groups through that lovely park and pointing out all my favorite spots.
Okay, anyone else?
Well, I agree with all the comments, but I'd like to also add that I think this is a great project for camaraderie and people working together with the town departments, the CPC, CPA, all that. I mean, it seems like a project that really lends itself to providing a new and exciting place for people to go to that hasn't been accessed before. And, nobody's going to walk down the street and just hop a fence and go into the train, go looking around. So I think it's really needed, and I'm impressed at how the town parks department and stuff has stepped in and helped with this project, and it's impressive that there's that working relationship. So I think it's something that needs to be promoted.
Absolutely, and and I think I also want to thank the Conservation Commission for reviewing this project to make sure that it was going to be allowable in their lot. It really does extend the accessibility into the park, and as I understand it as well, it literally in another phase of this, provide an accessible trail as well,
Phase
so.
two, yes.
Yeah, as a phase two. So I think this is certainly a win for Shrewsbury to leverage an underutilized resource. So while it sounds like we're creating a parking lot, you know, but the parking lot is providing the means to create, to recreate in Camp Wanigan, and which was certainly hard to do. So, you know, we definitely looked at this closely because obviously, you know, it's a parking lot, but
Yeah.
it's not, you didn't have great access to Camp Wanigan, and this will make it happen. So that's, we definitely looked at that closely, and certainly it checks off. So, I'm personally glad to see that. I want to see this move forward, for sure. Yeah.
I think
Rowan?
Martha may have had her hand raised as well.
Oh, sorry. Martha?
To check in.
I did, but I was going to comment on the phase two accessibility portion of it, which Jason, you already did. So having this parking lot enables the creation of an accessible trail to some of the highlights of the park later on as phase two.
Thank you. All right. Any other committee member questions, comments? No? Okay. Jim, could you lead us in the recommendation, please?
Yep.
Do you
And
have,
to-
do you have the amount, or do you need it written? Do
I
you need
wrote
it?
it down, as you mentioned it, Jason, I wrote it down.
Okay, thank you.
So I would like to make a motion for the CPC committee to recommend to town meeting to move forward with the Camp Wanigan project in the amount of $141,822 $141,822.81 for the project.
Second.
Thank you. It's been seconded. All right, again, roll call vote on this. Let's start off with Rajesh.
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Gail?
Aye.
Perna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. It is moving forward for recommendation. Okay, we're switching up now into the historical side of things. And so, Gail, could you please lead us with the District 5 Schoolhouse ADA Phase 1 Facility Review?
Sure. This project was brought forward from the Shrewsbury Historical Society in regards to doing an assessment of how the number 5 schoolhouse, which is located on Old Mill Road and Main Street, could be accessible. Not a lot of people know about that schoolhouse, but it's one of the few historic resources that we have left as far as buildings goes, and it's not accessible right now because it's not ADA compliant. So people may not know about it because they haven't been able to access it. It was used years ago for classrooms, the teachers would take their classes there for an example of how colonial schoolhouses ran, one-room schoolhouses. It was open at Spirit of Shrewsbury, but then because of ADA accessibility, they had to shut it down. So I think this is kind of a sleeper in the town, and if it was accessible with being ADA compliant, it would get much more use. And although it is a private entity and sort, it's a historic resource. This is just for an assessment in the amount of $1,994. They'll do a review and give suggestions in how it can be retrofitted to be accessible. So you're not gonna be able to use the building unless this is done. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer. It needs to be done before anything else can be done. So I would recommend that this move forward.
Okay. And so now at our last meeting, we had discussion, I'm sorry, the meeting when we had with the applicant.
Yes.
You were asked questions about, will this, actually Kathy, you were bringing up this question about would would this building be intention to use the building if this moved forward? And the answer was yes. So I think that supports,
Right.
you know, your position on that. I just want to clarify technicality about the ownership. So there is where you have the Historic Society as a private partner here, the building, or the land, rather, is owned by the town. So there is still there's a clawback provision to ensure that the building still remains in historic preservation. So there is, I'm gonna say, the public interest is still there, right? So we don't have to be concerned about these monies. Even though they're short money, there's still, the public interest is secure by the way it's structured right now.
Actually, the Historical Society did save that building by taking it over when it was scheduled to be demolished. So it's already been, they've already shown, you know, that their intention is to maintain it and keep it, so.
Yes. And it's a good thing, you know, for the organization to step forward and do that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about this building and
Absolutely.
seeing that resource in our community. Okay, any other committee comments, questions? Rowan's got.
Yeah, I just got a message as well. I do think, and so in terms of the ownership of the land, I just have a point on that.
Yeah.
I do believe that it was originally understood that the town owned the land, but that I believe, and I'm getting a message as well here, that the Historic Society does own the land.
That's what I thought.
But I remember, Jason, our call with the coalition, they also advised us that an assessment of this sort on such a historic resource is in and of itself a public benefit, and that due to this kind of scale of the project at this point, that they don't necessarily recommend pursuing any other sort of public benefit in the terms of a clawback agreement or a historical restriction, if that's the right term.
Right.
I remember that was the case as well. So even if there might be some question as to who owns the land, it is clear that I think that the public benefit has been met regardless. Would you be in agreement with that?
Yes, I'm agreeing with that. And I think looking back, I think it was the deed and mentioned about a clawback if it wasn't kept as a historic resource. So, but in either case, it becomes a moot point for this particular phase, this project being requested under 2,000. So, great points. I think we'll just hone in on that as we get to the next phase if they move forward with the next phase. So, any other questions, comments?
Okay, you're set?
We're set.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the CPC that we move forward the project for the District Number 5 Schoolhouse Accessibility Transition Plan, Phase 1, for the amount of $1,994.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, roll call for approval. Rajesh?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Gail?
Aye.
Perna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, unanimous moving forward for recommendation. Thank you very much. Okay, next project is the 1830 brick schoolhouse HVAC heat pumps.
You want me to take that?
Gail, please.
Sure. This project is brought forth from Shrewsbury Electric and Cable Operations for, see if I can get the,
65.
for installation of a highly efficient electric heat pump, HVAC, for the first and second floors of the 1830 schoolhouse, which is the Historical Society's building on Town Center. I had some reservations in the beginning with this one because there's a, the building contents, you know, are we providing support for that or the building? But the building is the historic resource, and the building needs to be preserved. There's another example of a building that has withstood, you know, all the other demolitions in town of historic resources. It is a town-owned building, but the Historical Society does maintain it. And providing this type of HVAC in that building would ensure that building is preserved. They've already done remediation for other things on that building, so it's sound, but it has to remain that way in order to preserve that building. There's an awful lot of Shrewsbury residents have gone through those doors, you know, and been taught in that school building. So I think in order to preserve the building, it is really a necessary thing. Windows have been changed, things have been done in that building already, but this is another chapter that will help preserve it for another, you know, hundreds of years. And it's the amount of that, Selco is leading this, that was brought to the society by Selco. It's the amount of $65,000 for the installation of the HVAC heat pumps, whatever.
Okay.
So,
And I do want to comment that there was a follow-up with Selco relative to conditions in the building, because we had a lot of extensive conversation about that in the last meeting,
right,
and that was submitted. So, you know, just summarizing here, I think the first line says it all. The HVAC and weatherization will address the existing problematic conditions of the building, including humidity,
yep,
lack of adequate temperature control, and undesirable thermal loss gain, all which threaten the structural integrity of the building. And then it goes on from there, and certainly it's in our drive, which you all have already had access to see. So, you know, that response coming out of our last meeting, for me personally, you know, seals it for me to say that I would move
Exactly.
forward with this project, in
Right.
my view.
I agree.
Any other committee comments, questions?
I think it also makes it more usable, just having it so that, you know, classroom can be taught maybe in the summer or even as we get closer to the end of the year when it gets a lot warmer.
Also just to add, I think with the heat pumps is a futuristic thing, so it may minimize the ongoing cost in future.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good call from Selco to go to that length and install the heat pump system there. So
In an efficient way to protect the building from
For long.
humidity using
Exactly.
HVAC,
Right.
ground source heat.
In the comments I'd submitted earlier, I had just referenced the time that I spent working at the Higgins Armor Museum. If any of you ever visited there, it was steel and glass. Completely inappropriate environment for historic artifacts. And it's my time there definitely showed me how critical HVAC systems, working systems, are to preservation of historic sites. And it makes sense to protect the building. The added benefit that ultimately there may be energy efficiency and cost savings and greater usage of the building because it's a safe and stable environment. So I am in favor of this.
And really, no matter what the use of that building is in the future, I mean, I would assume that we would want it to be the Historical Society forever and ever, but it's the building that still has to be preserved. So whatever the use is of it, we're preserving that building for future use.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, any other comments? Rowan? Are you good? Okay.
Good.
All right.
Sure,
Motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the CPC that we move forward the project of the 1830 Brick Schoolhouse HVAC heat pump for the amount of $65,000.
Second?
Okay, it's been seconded. Thank you. All right, so again, roll call. Rajesh?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Gail?
Aye.
Verna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, move forward for recommendation. All right, next is Prospect Park Pergola Restoration.
Okay. Did you want me to take?
Yes, please.
Okay. Prospect Park Pergola restoration, this is for the assessment and evaluation of the existing pergola. The project is for the firm of Lamoureux, Pagano, and Associates to do an assessment, drawings, schematic design, during the construction phase, be available for project meetings. It's a pretty comprehensive proposal. I spoke to the applicant and about, could we trim the budget a little bit, but it's such a thorough thing, and it's being done by such a reputable company that the town has worked with in the past and had success with, that I tend to think that maybe it's not such a bad proposal after all, because not only does it give some credibility to the project if it was to go forward in the future for additional funding, if the group was to go to historic preservation grants and things like that, to have this document in place would be a huge draw. So I know if the pergola is able to be restored, which it could be, it's not going to be an inexpensive item to do in the future. And that was a concern of mine is are we going to be spending all this CPA money on that project? But it's such a vital part of that location. And with all the work that's being done with the cemetery expansion and the whole Prospect Park redo, I think it's going to be a gem of that location and a destination point. And it's the only remaining piece of history of that piece of property, really. So at first I was a little bit skeptical of that sticker shock of that amount of a project, but if that's what the going rate is, that's what the going rate is. You either do it or don't do it, and you either do it thoroughly or instead of piecemeal. So I don't know that there's any way they could trim it. I wouldn't be objecting to lowering the number a little bit, but I'm okay if we have to, if we agree to go with it thoroughly. I mean, this is a project that if it's left to go not done, it's not going to be able to be done. So this is like a very timely project. Either do it now or I really won't be around too much longer. And there's another example of how the town has partnered with this group to get this project together, and I think that's a good sign when there's partnerships with town departments and citizens. It's a win-win. We can always work together to have progress done. So I'd like to hear what other people have to say about this one. I mean, I'm a little too close to it, I guess, so.
I think this is the right use of CPC type of funding. It's a very good historic component here, and then I made this comment last time, spending more money and doing a thorough assessment in the long run is going to be helpful. Whether it be to go for future CPC funding or maybe, who knows, some other state or federal funding. assessments, in my opinion, and planning documents always help. Shrewsbury has a great master plan. If somebody way long back didn't start something like that, a lot of what we do today wouldn't have any sense of real direction. So from that point of view, I fully support both the assessment. Yes, the cost is a little bit more, but I hope we get our money's worth in this assessment. So I am in support of this project.
Well, and you're paying for quality work as well. You know what you're getting from the company, so it's not like you're hiring somebody that you've never worked with before and that you don't know what you're gonna get. So you could, at least we can feel confident that, and there's historical people involved with this that will do that type of evaluation as opposed to just somebody with, off the street with their hammer and says, yeah, I know how to fix that. So it's like they're a reputable company and they've done this type of work before. So to do an assessment, I think this is, like you said, it is to do it right the first time, and then you know what you have to do in the future.
I love Prospect Park. I love this project. I agree. We have one chance to do it right. My reservation comes in looking at the proposal, and Lamro Pagano is among some of the very best in the business. I just wonder if for right now, we need, if you look at the last 3 items on their proposal,
Right.
it's drawings and specifications suitable for public construction bidding, which is a very pricey and critical step to a project, as well as responding to bid phase questions and contract administration during the construction phase. Those 3 items on the bid seem premature. Now, they're including 12 meetings for project management when they haven't yet assessed, can we save it?
Well,
I think that's my one question that I don't know that we ever got an answer to, is could we move forward but with, the first 5 steps or first 4 steps? Because I do want to see this assessed and find out what we can do. I just wonder if it's appropriate for us to be paying for that if they come back and tell us there's 1 column that can be saved.
That was my concern as well. That's why I reached out to the applicant to see if we could trim those off. She didn't really have an answer for me, but I don't know where we could go from there.
Yeah, if
you're,
I love the project. That's just the one part
that
that
was
gives me
exactly my
pause.
feeling. Yep.
And the one part thinking about town meeting, if we have to answer
Yep.
that part, we could point to somebody else to answer that, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think there's an opportunity here to put that into the grant agreement in terms of a milestone perspective. To say, certainly you're not going to have contract administration in the very beginning, right? You're going to look at, as you're saying, you're going to have these other activities happen first. So, there is no construction at this point. We're not approving the work, right? We're just approving, we're approving this phase, but I believe they're going to be a position where we're leaving money on the table intentionally, because there is no, there's no bid phase out there. They need to have approval for the project to move forward to build, right, before you can go out and bid. So, unless Perna, from a planning perspective, do you think that you would still have a bid phase even if you don't have a project that you're actually constructing?
I don't know. I think if they are sure that the project is going to go forward with some funding assurances from some groups or maybe future CPC or some other funding, yeah, you can prepare, but it's one of those we can condition our approval to work on that or scale back or whichever way we feel appropriate, But in some cases, it might help to have that additional information. But here, if it's in terms of going to cost us more money, I don't know.
Well, I think at this point, there isn't a breakdown to say how much money is in each one of these buckets. You know, I think we can go on a, I think we can go on an approach which is approval of the amount, total amount, and leave this down to the grant agreement to call out milestones and say, first phase of this approval is your early upfront work, but any phases that require actual building of them, you're not approved for the construction, right? You only approve for this design work. And so I think that should be a checkpoint back to planning to say, here, this is where we're at. This is from a project moving forward perspective, right? So all these projects would be subject to a check-in with planning anyway to say, this is where our other project is, when they commenced, this is where our other project. And so there's gonna be some actuarial piece to this as well. And so I think that we can leave this to that activity. Rowan, do you think this?
Yeah,
That's
to
feasible?
clarify then, you're more or less proposing that we ask that the assessment be done prior to the development of the bid documents and the specifications and things like that, so take it in the order that it's listed more or less in the scope of service here, and ask for checkpoints along the way. I think that's doable, and I think that would be built into the process anyway. I don't know if we would, it might be hard to make it conditional to go in that order because there might be some overlap. I wouldn't know
Right.
exactly what the process is, but I imagine that we could work something out where there's just maybe, an accountability with the reporting of it that makes sure that the committee is, that the CPA funds are being used in the way that the committee intends them to be.
Right, and because also when there's not an approval for the actual work, right, for the restoration work.
Sure, no, and it
Just
doesn't
as
look
only
like
the
the
design,
scope
so.
here has any of that, so maybe that is a condition as well, that there can't be any actual implementation done. Is that what you are?
Right, well, I mean, to your question about, say, why would you have a construction?
Right, I just
Piece to
wondered
this.
if really the last two,
Two, for sure.
if it's necessary to have drawings for, the level of drawing that need to go out to bid is pretty sophisticated, but we don't have the assessment or the existing conditions documentation yet. I guess I'm just concerned about, what if they tell us it can't be saved? I hope they don't. I really hope they don't.
Yeah,
But then what's the point of
Right.
schematic designs?
Well, I would imagine then that the funds would just not be expended, right? If the assessment comes back and,
Presumably.
I mean, and that's where the check-in would occur, right? If the assessment comes back, or if some sort of result of the CPA funds, right, diverts from this path that's in front of you here that you're approving, then the CPC has the power to say, no, come back to what was the approved path here. So I think that is a reasonable.
Who would be signing the contract with LPA? The Friends of Prospect Park? Is they're asking for a lump sum fee for the scope outlined. That's why I was wondering about narrowing the scope. Because I don't think that they charge as, step one's done, here's one bill, that it's a lump
and-
sum for this entire scope.
If you look in the folder as well, we do have a letter from the, from Kevin Esposito, right? It's just saying that the cost of the project, to break it down would be higher, and that they aren't necessarily comfortable doing that at this point because it would be leaving money on the table in regards to further trimming down the scope. So that's titled response, CPC response in your folder, so. That also addresses some of that conversation, I
that.
imagine.
I would trust that Kevin knows more about that than I do.
In terms of science. And so to your question about signing the agreement, and this would be managed through the town. This is not through,
Yeah,
Rental
no,
Park is
it would go through the town's account, yeah. And that's something that we would talk about too, once all these applicants are notified of funding, we would make sure that the town, when there's co-sponsors, the town's responsible for administrating the funds. Because Friends of Prospect Park could not receive the funds under sort of the best practices for CPC.
right? And I think then also the other question you had about like, well, what if they come to, as they're going through this process, realize, ooh, this can't be saved? Like,
Right.
first, I think that if they're committing to having an estimate at this point, it's because there's a thought that it can't be saved. But two, if they get into the weeds of this and say, well, we can't, they're a long partner with our community, right? And so
They're
I
a
think they
great
would
firm, good
be
people
upfront
and a great
and
firm.
say, no, we actually, we'll stop here. You sure you want me to go forward?
Go ahead.
Kathy?
I imagine they must have, that they didn't just say, oh, there's a pergola, it'll be
I was just-
$85,000.
yeah, I was-
So I'm sure they've seen it and they have an idea that it can be done and this is what's involved.
To my knowledge, they have been out to it already, so that they know the scope of what has to be done. And to Debbie's point, I trust Kevin's expertise too, so.
Yes,
you
our
know,
expert.
If this is, you know,
Okay.
they know more about this stuff than I do, that's for sure. But I have to agree that the last two items on that list probably I'm not as comfortable with, but if it's included, it's included, you know, it's like, it's not
To
gonna happen.
Kevin's
It's not
point,
gonna happen.
It might be to our benefit that it's included rather than
Yeah.
later asking for it.
And that's,
Yeah.
Brenda's point. All right.
All right.
But that's our job, to nitpick.
I know, this was a tough one because of the scope of what was on here. It was like, do we need all this assessment? But we probably do. You know, that's what assessment's for.
Right.
We've done it for a lot of projects in town, you know, paid a lot of money to assess feasibility studies and everything else. So it's a cost of doing business.
So I have I'll be the naysayer.
It's okay.
So I think it's important to have the assessment, and I'll say that I agree with moving forward with this assessment. I'm highly concerned that the assessment's going to come back astronomical, and then we have to remind ourselves that there's prioritization of these monies. Right now, we're fortunate that the projects that are before us, the 8 projects, if they're all recommended tonight, that they're gonna move forward within the amount that's available in our budget. However, that could change as soon as there's a community housing building in the millions of dollars. It could change for an open space purchase, you know, for either recreation or protect the land, open space, et cetera. And, you know, land is not cheap, right? So my concern is that, you know, while tonight we're okay with the assessment, and I will be okay with the assessment as well. I'm saying yes to that, so I should caveat that. I'm going to be highly watching the costs come back on that, and I don't think I would be optimistic about that. I would be very cautious about that coming back. I think, I'm just gonna verbalize it, I'm not gonna make it a stipulation, but I think it'd be best if the recommendations that come back, the plan that comes back, be broken down in some kind of like, this is best, better, you know, good, right? What's good enough, X dollars. The best thing to do is, you know, even higher number, because otherwise, if we don't see that kind of breakdown, we may be looking at just the big top number, and then that'd be a hard number to swallow for a 9-member committee, let alone 240, you know,
Right.
town meeting members to also do the same, right? So I think we want to just make sure that we're cognizant of that, right? There's a lot of parties out there.
Yeah, I think just to add on that, I think I'm sticking to my previous comments. Like definitely the sticker price, as you mentioned, Martha, as you mentioned, is high, and as like I mentioned this, like what would be the ongoing cost for restoration? So I prefer the other way. If they get funding from somewhere else for this and then come back for restoration for CPC funds, that would be good. CPA funds, that would be good. But I think, I'm on the fence on this still.
Okay.
To Kevin's
Sorry,
point, his,
somebody,
oh,
somebody jumped in. Who raised a hand?
Martha.
Martha?
Yes, thank you. I think I support going ahead with this proposal, but I also agree that it's very likely that the actual restoration is going to come back with an astronomical cost. However, this may be one of those situations where CPC funding helps to be a springboard for finding other sources of funding. So I guess my message to the Friends of Prospect Park is that if they haven't started thinking that way, that they may want to. It's certainly possible that CPC can, or CPA can provide a baseline of funding. And there are often many foundations which are looking for some measure of community support and commitment in order to fund other projects. But I think that's getting ahead of ourselves. What we're being asked to do right now is to take a look at funding this assessment.
Thank you.
I agree with Martha was reading my mind that when she spoke of this possibly as a springboard, Kevin makes a good point in his response, Kevin Esposito's official response to the committee, in that it's the timeliness of this as well. If, when it's done, should there be a project with a large price tag, they'll already be armed with schematic designs, which to go to a foundation, to go to potential individual donors is an incredible tool for a fundraiser to have. So, as Martha said, this we're looking at right now. We'll just arm them for whatever comes next by having these tools at their disposal. So, I am in favor of this.
Any other comments?
That's an excellent point about going to a foundation or something with those schematics. I did not consider that, and we owe your depth of expertise in fundraising for that insight. I guess it makes sense to have it. I know, I cringe at the price, too.
Yeah. Well, we know we're taking our responsibility to be good stewards of these funds seriously. That's why we're asking questions. It's not meant to be negative about any of these projects. They've all come forward with the best intentions, but it is our job to look at them 8 ways from Sunday and try to guess and nitpick and see what the best way to move forward is. But the more we talk about this one,
Yeah,
I
and
think it is the
well,
best.
there's the other thing you have to consider is that there may be inflation out there that may make these look rather modest.
Right.
So sometimes saving money is not as good as doing something and then you have it. So that's a definite consideration.
Seems a wise investment.
Yeah.
Just one last
Yeah.
comment, just to follow up, similar to the comment that I made earlier for the Dean Park, that encompasses assessment, design, and construction. Here, at least in a cursory way, it looks like this has assessment and design incorporated into that, so it's not a separate part. Sometimes these bigger companies or consultants, when they mobilize their team, they mobilize the whole team, and that way the whole bidding and design turns out to be a lot less overall for the project. If we just do the assessment and then go to somebody for design, that can add a significant cost to the project, And you folks raised a very good point. Again, if they all know, CPC has only so much money, even in the second, next year or the following year, we can only do so much to support these projects. And if it turns out that the assessment comes out like you need to spend a lot of money, they'll have to go to some other agencies and they'll have a first set of cursory design and some numbers and some bid documents to move forward. So I am, as I think more and more, I'm more in favor of moving forward with this, with the whole component that they proposed.
My last comment, I think, thanks, Boone. I think that's what I think last time he convinced my second thoughts on this. Thanks for refreshing that. So yeah, that piece that maybe it's needed to move forward to the next step. So I'm not very comfortable. So maybe, but still in the spirit of CPCA funding, giving a broader scope for the community, opportunity to maybe restore with some other funding or maybe batched with CPA funding. Maybe it's not too bad, but still it's still a little. As you rightly mentioned, that we also need to look for the long term, not to put all our eggs in one bucket and then not so. That's one other thing I'm still debating.
All right, well, do you have is there any material questions you have?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, what I mean is to be able to make a recommendation or not recommendation? You good? Okay, all right.
I would imagine that if they did not have the funding for this assessment, that there would be no way to garner that kind of funding in another way. And this does allow that group to go forward with different options after this. So I think we are, like Martha had said, we are giving them a springboard for future success with this project, or else it wouldn't happen.
It's kind of nice that it comes from us, because we're the town, and, you know, this is a town thing. The town should take the first step, you know?
And the Friends of Prospect Park have been doing so much work in that park, you know,
I know.
with not a whole lot of accolades. So I think this would spur on a bigger movement for the community to join in on that whole project.
They've really worked hard, and
They worked
a lot of times
terribly.
they were, had major setbacks when some other project had, like, the one, you know, the tanks up at the top and all that, and just,
So,
you know. Yeah, they deserve, you know, pat on the back here and some support.
Well, I think too that, you know, the fact that the Historic Commission has deemed the pergola as a local historic asset. You know, suddenly, in order for us to get to this point, it had to
Right.
be, you know, that had to be that way. But, you know, formally seeing this as a value to our community and worthy of preservation. And I think, to your point, you know, I think getting this, putting some money in there to understand what would it take to protect this and rehabilitate it, will make it, you know, hopefully stand for a much longer time, right? But again, we'll see how it comes out. So I can support certainly the assessment. Okay, last call. I think we've heard from everybody. Almost.
I know
Except for
they're
Jen.
sweating at home.
All right. Would you like to make the motion?
Sure.
I'm sorry, actually, you know what? I do want to make a clarifying point. The letter says 80, and the online says 85. Go with the,
Shoot. No, that's fine. I think, the most formal version will be in the budget. So,
the budget form that they submitted?
no, in our budget article. So that's
Okay.
really where the funding will, you're just saying the number's wrong on the letter?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you could maybe just note it and initial and I think that's fine.
So we
We'll
should
just
be-
make sure that the corrected version, as shown in their budget sheet, their budget application, I should say, is on our budget article.
Got it. Okay. So that amount is 85,500.
500?
Yeah,
And-
85,500.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. As stated on the budget form.
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the CPC allocation of $85,500 to the project Prospect Park Pergola Restoration.
Is there a second?
Second.
For a second. Okay. All right, roll call for approval. Rajesh?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Yes, aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Gail?
Aye.
Verna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. All right, move forward recommendation. All right, last project. Gail, it's the historic gravestone restoration, Phase
Sure.
1 inventory and assessment.
Yep. This is being brought forward from the Shrewsbury Historic District Commission to do an assessment of sections 1 through 9 of Mountain View Cemetery for evaluation of the headstones in the amount of $5,500. It's an inventory assessment. And I don't know that I need to explain the urgency or the need for this project. And again, this is an assessment. They'll do an inventory and basically catalog what's there, what needs to be repaired, what is historic, what isn't, what's been replaced. And then going from that assessment, then they'll be able to determine the restoration phases of the whole project. So it's needed. I don't know what else to say. I mean, if you have questions, fine, but I think we've talked about this a lot. We know people have been through that cemetery. They've seen the what's happening there.
Any comments?
Yeah, no, I think based on my previous comments, I think I'm fully in support with that assessment, and it's definitely needed for the town. And then I'm looking forward to the next step in restoration. So, full support.
Anybody else? You know, I agree, you know, just a simple walkthrough of the historic part of the cemetery. Your eyes are just open to the damage that's already been done. And this is the first effort to look at, the project is phase 1 to look at that assessment and see what can be done to preserve and protect.
It may sound like overkill to have to do an assessment, you know, why can't you just go in there and fix and do it? But there are guidelines that have to be followed, and there's procedures that have to be followed. So the assessment is the first phase of that. You know, as much as people want to go in and repair broken gravestones and reset headstones, you can't do that. It has to be done in a certain way and with certain guidelines. So there's a procedure that has to be followed, and this is part of the procedure in the process.
Absolutely. Okay. Last call, anybody? Okay. Motion, please.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to recommend to CPC that we allocate $5,500 for the Mountain View Cemetery Historic Gravestone Restoration Phase 1 Inventory Assessment.
Second.
All right, roll call. Rajesh?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Gail?
Aye.
Verna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Moving forward for recommendation. All right. Well, great. That concludes all the projects submitted to date through our normal process. We have 8 projects that have been recommended for advancement to town meeting at the annual town meeting in May. And congratulations to the applicants for working with CPC through this process. Certainly, if you're still watching, please ensure that you provide feedback to the committee as well in terms of the process and how to make that better. In our next few meetings, we'll be looking at improving the process for the future. And certainly, you living this part is it'll be very fresh to get your perspective on this. So would definitely appreciate any feedback you have to the committee. Please send that through Rowan at the planning email address or any other means. Yes, see you in the hallway, phone call, either way. That'd be great. All right, so that concludes that agenda item, and we get to move on. I think I lost my agenda paper. My paper shuffle. Yeah. There we go, thank you. All right. Meeting dates. Okay, so we've run out of our scheduled meeting dates, and so Rowan has sent out a doodle poll to see about the next 2 meetings. So Rowan, if you could please let us know the results.
So, there's some very clear results. We gave you 2 dates in March and 2 dates in April, and the first of both of those months work best. So, all 9 members, with the exception of, Perna and Kathy, I believe can make both March 6th and April 3rd.
I can do
Does-
April 3rd.
Okay. Perna, it looks like you answered no to March 6th, but as you were the only one and the other day had 5 yeses, I feel like will be closer to quorum for the other ones. So my recommendation would be March 6th and April 3rd, both at 7 p.m.
Okay.
in this room.
All right. So that, the March meeting would be taking up any, the budget article, the draft article that would go to the warrant process. We'd also be starting our conversation about improving our process and reviewing that. I think we're also going to be, tonight, we should be talking about April 3rd as the meeting, the public hearing. Right.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So April 3rd will be our public hearing to get community feedback on the needs, resources, and opportunities in Shrewsbury. If you remember, this is part of our community preservation plan. It's also our charge to annually get that updated. So that meeting, instead of having the large formal meeting as we'd had the first cycle, since we have a lot of information received already from that, we're just going to have that meeting in here. Unless we hear by any wild turnout that wants to come out, then we would have to move it to another location. But otherwise, April 3rd will be our meeting to hear the public hearing, unless there's any objection to that plan.
May I add
Please.
one other thing? I'm not sure if you've gotten there yet, but just a reminder to our representative members as well. Do you
yes.
mind? Just, I think we would also like to see by the April 3rd meeting that you've gone back to your respective committees and gotten their input as well. That is required in our CPA bylaw. I think you've all done that, maybe with the exception of Perna. So again, it would just, I can send out some email guidance as well, some talking points. But again, just walking the respective committee through the process we just completed, walking them through the CPC plan, and gathering any input that they might have since the previous year that you solicited their feedback. I believe that's it. Is there any other goals of those conversations?
I mean, it really is, it's getting any updates to the needs of our community preservation, opportunities, and resources. So if any new resources came online, certainly, that would be something to put out there, or any needs, right? Certainly, the ADA survey that's been done through town, that's a resource that will be folding into our document, for sure, as it applies to the community preservation aspects.
I have a question.
Sure.
As you're talking about the board members who are here, I believe my term ends this year, in June, I guess, and I'm
Yeah.
just wondering what happens then?
Sure.
Is it
Yeah.
goodbye, or?
No,
I was appointed by the selectmen, the select
yeah,
board.
So at-large members, I think, Jason, you just went through this
Right.
this year. Again, it'll just, I believe the town manager's office will reach out about a month ahead of your expiring appointment, and they'll ask if you're looking to seek reappointment. I believe your name will be put, you know, on the agenda of a Board of Selectmen meeting, and they will vote, on reappointing. I believe that's it. It's pretty simple. If you don't want to seek reappointment, though, I believe they'd put out a call, for other
Okay,
interested,
I will await,
so,
you know, my owl, so to speak.
sounds good.
And I think certainly for the members that are in the other committees, right, that are statutory required, you know, certainly you want to get back to your committee, you know, to let them know whether you want to remain with CPC, or not. So, Kathy?
As far as the feedback that you mentioned that you'd like to have at the April meeting, perhaps we could reconvene the Housing Authority and the Affordable
Yeah.
Trust Group
Yeah,
prior to that meeting.
great idea.
Thank you.
I think we had three-way conflicts
That was a tough
in
one to
January.
schedule.
Yeah, that fell off. My
Jeez.
list's a little.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, certainly, but I think there is some movement on the Affordable Housing Trust side, right, relative to the
Yeah,
signing, right?
I feel, I'll check back in. I think it might be best to wait just a little bit longer to get some stuff with them rolling. I know they're,
Yeah, maybe March, just so we have an
Yeah.
update for the
Right.
April 3rd meeting.
I think that's fine. Cool.
All right. Certainly, we can cover this in a March meeting, but is my intention, I think that we should go back to, you know, cycle through those committees that we went through before to solicit any new updates. So let's say, you know, or community groups as well, right? So if there's any groups that we didn't get to in the first round, certainly a lot of the sports organizations, this would be a great time to kind of circle back saying, hey, you didn't make it into this first round here, but is anything, have you seen any needs in our
Maybe we can
community?
invite them to a meeting together,
Hmm.
have them all in one room, rather than trying to go to all of their board meetings, which, if soccer was any indication, they're pretty packed.
Well, I mean, that's the point of the public meeting. So it's saying, okay, we're having an open meeting here, public hearing, that the best call is to come April 3rd to join that. But certainly, if it's more useful to come, you know, meet them at their location at that meeting, then we could entertain that if schedules allow. And that certainly is an individual basis. We don't need the full committee to do that, right? Like we did before, we had partnered up, you know, two going into that 2 year, you know, 4 years instead of 2 years. So, okay. All right. So that's the next two meeting dates. We'll when we get to the April meeting, then we'll figure out the rest of the meeting dates for May and June, to commiserate. But, you know, typically just kind of think of like the first week in the month, right, tentatively. Because we do have to schedule time to update the community preservation plan and any changes to any forms if we want to do that. And any process changes that we want to announce as well. Am I missing anything?
No, just make a motion for me, though, for those dates, please.
Okay. All right. So, would you make a motion?
I make a motion, we hold our next two meetings on March 6th and April 3rd, both at 7 PM, with April 3rd being our annual public hearing.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And then roll call. Rajesh?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Martha?
Hi.
Gail?
Aye.
Perna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, approved. All right.
So your meetings, town meeting is a week earlier than usual this year. I believe it came out, it's May 15th.
That sounds right.
Heartbreaking.
Yep.
It's my birthday.
But I will. I'm not positive on that date.
I believe that I saw that something, but that might impact our May meeting.
Was that formally,
Yeah,
the select board actually set that date?
Thought, where did I?
I think so.
It must have
think
been
so.
something
I think
formal for
I
me
think
to
they
have seen
did.
it.
I think
I
so.
apologize. I'm just not
Yeah,
on
'cause I
that
think
email
I put it in my
but
calendar.
Okay. All right, well, we certainly, we're not the officials on that.
Right.
So, please see official
It's in my
channels for
calendar,
that.
so it must be.
When I
that
saw it,
Right.
it surprised me because it was
And
Early.
and we'll go to Tuesday. It
Yeah.
won't be Monday, Wednesday, it'll be Monday,
Right.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, right.
That's what I had seen.
Okay, all right, let's leave it to the official
Visit the select board's
communications. Okay, let's move on.
website for more
It
information.
was, I think, it was on Facebook.
Any correspondence, different from what we discussed?
No.
All right, awesome. Okay.
Oh,
next
I
item.
actually,
Oh.
I actually do have an update. I'm sorry. Just briefly, I wanted to let you know that I spoke to the CPC administrator in Grafton and got some feedback, just sort of casual about their process, what they do between now and town meeting, and then town meeting to funding. So, I received the version that the contract that they use for their applicants, that the CPC engages, enters into with their applicants who have received funding at town meeting. And they just gave some general feedback as well about what works, what doesn't. They talked about how they felt it was really important to, invite the applicants to town meeting to answer questions on behalf of their project, to have the CPC be an advocate, but that it's still the applicant's project. So they just talked about the importance of that. So I know that's something the committee has already talked about, but I will be informing applicants to please put the town meeting date on their calendars and anticipate attending that. So I believe that was sort of the gist of it, but it was a helpful conversation, and definitely looking to build some more regional partnerships with other CPA administrators in the area. So.
Well, thank you. I mean, certainly, this is to a point that, Brenna, you discussed, we brought up 2 meetings ago, I think it was, where clearly we're seeing that there's the coalition is stretched. And so kind of reaching out to other CPCs and their administrators to see how we can learn from their experience as well. Right? Grafton and Northborough being longtime CPA communities, and certainly, hopefully one day we'll be able to share that with the newcomers as well. So, all right, well, great. Yeah, that's certainly, I think that's an opportunity for regional coordination. And also just remind you that CPA encourages to regionalize, right, where applicable, right? So whether it be regional housing solutions, to coordinate with transportation and other services, right? So that's certainly, I think, an opportunity. There's certainly trails, right?
Yes.
Integrating between different communities.
I've already thought of that.
Woke it right up.
And open space, to getting, obviously, nature knows no man-made boundary, right? So,
Yes.
Unifying environments as well. So, anyway, off the soapbox. Anything else, correspondence?
No, I think that's.
Okay, anything from Stuart to share broadly?
No, he really just helped me understand the budget a bit better.
Okay.
And sort of how to manage that going forward. So that's
All right.
kind of internal, I would say.
Thank you. All right, so then we're on to next steps. And so apart from our meetings I already covered, I think we're, certainly we still have a lot of work ahead of us, right? Because we want to make sure we improve the process and have that community preservation plan revised. So definitely from this point on, should definitely be reaching out to your networks and, preaching CPA and advising them to, folks to come to the public hearing. So be able to give us input and certainly have them start thinking about projects for next year or the following year, et cetera. So, all right, any questions?
Jason, what do we, what preparation do we have to do for town meeting now, as far as the committee?
Right, so town meeting, apart from the actual warrant article itself, which we'll see in the March meeting, I'm anticipating we're gonna have like a document that would send out saying, here are the 8 projects, here's a write-up about them, how much they need, a little blurb about them, pictures to go along with it, and I would either envision myself or a designate that would speak to it. But I think we would coordinate that through the town manager's office in terms of to make it an efficient town meeting. So I think that still remains to be seen, but that's how I foresee that. And of course, as we said before, once again, if there's any the applicants should really come to the town meeting because, certainly town meeting members could ask any kind of question. And we're not gonna be prepared to kind of answer every scenario that may be brought up. So that's certainly an advisement for them.
At this stage, are we going to send out a letter to the applicant indicating that their project has been recommended, or wait until after March meeting?
Yes,
nice.
thank you. So,
Yeah.
Jason
Okay.
has been signing those, so
Okay.
I will scan them and email them out or
Okay,
send an electronic notification that they'll be moving on to town meeting.
and I believe in there is a line that says applicants are welcome to attend the town meeting if they should have any questions. You know?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yes, it does.
That's
yeah.
in there.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
So there's there's the letter that's saying,
Mhm.
the results of tonight.
Yeah.
But there's also a draft document that goes along with it, so this is the actual, you want to talk about that?
Well, yes, and Jason, I chose, so I felt that we had that, so we have a draft contract from Grafton, like I mentioned, right? They shared that with me, and so I adapted it a bit to Shrewsbury, but if the committee is in agreement, I think I might want to put it in front of you folks on the March meeting as a more formal review of that draft, because they did have, Grafton had a number of conditions or sort of general practices that I think is important to run by the group first. So you'll also see that ahead of the March meeting. And so I'm going to hold off on sending
Okay.
that until the committee reviews. Is that
Yeah, that sounds good. That's good.
good with you? Okay, great.
And that agreement is actually executed after town meeting approves,
Correct.
right? So
Correct.
that's,
So the letter now notifying them is the correspondence from you folks. And as staff, I'll work and support the applicants as needed to prepare for town meeting if they do have questions. But in general, we'll follow up with them after, once we know if they've been funded or not, and then the administration of the funds begins.
okay. Including the project, let's say, closeout or initiation and notifications and milestones, right? So, okay. Anybody else? Comments, questions?
Is the, sorry,
Go for it.
is that contract / agreement, is that something that the town council need to take a look at it, just to cover our bases?
Yep.
It may have some legalist language, so I just want to make sure that the right
Absolutely.
people take a look at it,
Yep, I think that's a great suggestion, and we'll pursue that. I think
Okay.
that can certainly occur.
Last call? Okay, great.
We're really there?
Sounds like we're,
We're really there?
anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All right, let's go roll call. Rajesh?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Gail?
Aye.
Perna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
And myself, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me get a photograph.